Hi, this is the Pro and Con Show for May 26th, 2019. And my name is Michael James Ott. I'm the host of the show. This is actually a makeup video from, I got caught up in some family support things I was doing and couldn't be here live. I apologize. I was normally do this show live on Facebook every day at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. And well, it didn't work out that way. Wife has a cousin in, and she's maybe going to move up in this area. So anyway, we were out looking for some potential homes that she might want, that kind of thing. And the premise of the show is to try to talk reasonably and ferret out the truth. Avoid the bias and that kind of stuff. And so normally I'd be looking at the 5 different websites, some of them left-leaning, some of them right-leaning, the one in the middle, National Public Radio. But right now there isn't really. It's Sunday, May 26th, and there's not kind of like a main news stream that's across all those websites. And it is Sunday, and I feel like speaking about racism, bias, and oppression. And I will, this is one topic that I'll bring up today, and I've brought up in the past. I'll bring it up, I'm sure, handfuls of times over the next hundreds of days as I do these videos. But the what I want to say is that I had this experience when we were taking my wife's cousin around the Twin Cities. And what I saw was that there definitely was still this segregation going on. So some of the neighborhoods where, people of like color or whatever were kind of living together. And it reminded me of my wife and I. We had visited the Civil Rights Museum down in Tennessee a couple of years ago. It was, and it's a great museum, and I strongly recommend going to see it. And of course, one of the things that they talk about in the museum is the forced segregation that was actually law, a couple of decades ago in some areas. And then the other point that the museum makes in some of the displays is that later on, even after the legal or forced segregation was ended, segregation still is occurring kind of naturally, if you will, that kind of like looking people, like people with like similar backgrounds or similar origins, we're still segregating. And so they had some maps on walls, and they showed, different areas of cities, and it would show, this area is, this minority, and this area is this minority, and so on. And so, what I wanted to speak to then is, kind of my theory on the source of the racism. And that is, or one piece of it anyway, feels to me like, we as a species, we were in smaller groups, family groups, or clans, if you will, fairly small groups roaming and trying to survive in it was a fairly hostile, difficult time. And you were raised, and even today, you're born into a family, you're raised by a family, and you come to trust people that look like you. And why do they look like you? Well, they share a lot of your DNA because they're part of your family history. But this is a world where we rapidly get beyond that. So we're truly a global place, a global community. And regardless of where I came from, and whoever you're watching this video from, and whatever your background is, whatever your origins are, whatever your history is, you're watching it as well. And you're going to naturally have a predisposition, or at least my theory is, you'll have a natural predisposition to like people and trust people that kind of look like you, whatever that is. And I'm doing the same, and you know, to all the people that would watch this video, or all the people around the earth, this is kind of the same thing. So you're going to have this natural bias toward trusting people that kind of mostly look like you, and that you feel like you have similar histories or similar origins. And but that's true for all of us. And but now we're in the same world together. So you can't allow yourself. You have to consciously think to yourself, I've got to fight this kind of internal bias. I've got to, what if I'm speaking with somebody, if I'm working with somebody, I have to consciously, in my mind, say to myself, am I treating this person differently than I would treat myself, or differently than I would treat a family member or someone else that kind of looked like me or whatever? And if the answer is yes, you have to stop and say, well, wait a second, I can't do that. It's really important, I can't do that. Well, why is that? Well, because in the situation that you're in, it just happens to be happenstance that you're in that situation. It's happenstance that you were born where you were born. I could have been, I mean, whoever you are watching this video, you and I could have been reversed. It's not fate, it's providence. It happened. You were born where you were born. You had the history that you had. I've had, my history that I've had up to this point. It just happened. And so to think, differently about that, and now for you or me or anyone else to apply some kind of bias or oppressive action because I happen to be in the majority at the moment and you happen to be in the minority at the moment, well, the problem with that is, obviously it's wrong, but even from a practical standpoint, it's wrong because they're problematic because, as things change, as fate would be, even some minutes later, you might be where the situation is reversed. Let's say maybe you're in a city and there's a riot going on in the streets and you happen to be part of the majority at one point and you're, doing something harmful and hateful, aggressive, anger-filled toward a minority. And then, moments later, some other people that are part of or similar to the minority person, the original minority, come into the street, and now that person is now part of the majority, and you were, once in the majority are now in the minority. And now here we go. We have this huge clash. And this, the examples go on and on and on. The point is that we've got to consciously think about all the time avoiding, our internal bias and bigotry and oppression and racism. I mean, it's just something that in the world that we're in, it's inappropriate, and unfortunately it goes on all the time. It's an ongoing thing, and I don't know that it'll ever go away. And what the one thing I would say is that our responsibility, my responsibility to you, your responsibility to me, is to always consciously think about it and try to make it go away. I think that's the thing that should continue forever, is a conscious, concerted effort by every person to look at other people and consciously decide that they're going to treat them much as they would treat themselves or other family members or other people with similar history or backgrounds. It's just the necessary thing. We're in this world together, and it's that part is never going to change, and in fact, it's just going to get more and more persistent. And so, some of the things that we could do about that, obviously, is also if you're thinking about moving, physically living in a different place at some point, well, think about consciously making the effort to, or the conscious decision to live in an area that is mostly some other group of peoples. So we can consciously start intermingling with each other on a more regular basis, and familiarity will breed positive relationships and friendships and support and so on. So I think that's all I want to say today for the Sunday, May 26th show. Again, strongly encouraging every single person that would ever watch this video to consciously consider their own internal biases as they look at other people, and try to fight those biases by asking themselves, would I do something different if this person looked different at the moment? Is there would I be acting different? Would I behave differently? Would I treat them differently if this other person looked or spoke whatever differently? And so in that way, consciously overcome bias and bigotry and racism and oppression. It has no place in our world. It has no place in our lives. All right, so that's the end of the show for today. Hope what I've said is interesting and causes you to have some thoughts about that, take some actions maybe differently in your life going forward. And for this show, I say goodbye for now.